This is compost. Okay? Compost. It's composted soil. It's actually composted trees and stuff. That's what it is, composted trees. And it's got biology in it. So the key is, what we want to do is add the biology back to the soil. Okay? The whole key to growing without fertilizers, without pesticides and herbicides and fungicides, is to grow biologically. So, before we start, why don't we have a word of prayer, shall we? Father in heaven, I thank you for the opportunity to open your word and also open your book of nature in order to see the great things that you have in store for us. I thank you for your love and for your goodness and for this wonderful creation you've made for our enjoyment. In Jesus' name, amen. I wonder how long they're going to sing. Does anyone know? I'm going to show you on this slide first the biology that exists in this. And if I brought you dirt, you would see that there is absolutely no biology in it. Now, I had a lady, after I did a class in Gainesville, she said, "Can you come over to my house and tell me what's wrong with my soil? I can't grow anything." She goes, "Even the weeds don't grow well." And I said, "Sure, I'll be happy to do that." So I went over to her house and I took a microscopic test and I tested her soil, and she had no life in it. It was just dirt. The definition of soil is it has to have 5 components. Soil has 5 components, and dirt has 5 components. All right, so soil and dirt differentiate in one item. In soil, you have clay, silt, sand. Okay, and if you had them in 33 parts each, 33% each, that's what they call a loamy soil. All right. Now, then you have organic matter, and almost all soil has organic matter unless you're sitting in a hydroponic greenhouse, just growing in sand. And then the last is the biology. In dirt, you have the pathogenic biology, and in soil, you have life-giving biology. And as long as the life-giving properties are there, as long as this biology is present, it breaks down every single grain of sand and turns it into plant-soluble nutrition. And that plant-soluble nutrition is what feeds the plants. And as long as you don't put any fertilizer on it, you will never have to fertilize it again, ever, once you convert it. Okay? So, I'm going to show you the biology in this. And this is some of my soil, okay, that I grow. Okay, all I'm going to do is extract the biology. That's all I'm doing, okay? All right. That there. And I'm going to show it to you on the screen so you can see it better. Now, I do a lot of microscopic work in order to know what's going on and how I improve the soil and that kind of stuff. And so what you want to do is improve it by basically pre-inoculants. That's hard for me to see here. All right, let me get out of this, pull up my microscopic screen, and isn't she beautiful? She's part of this class. All right, my wife is out there visiting her right now, so I'm a bachelor. All right, now when you look at this, do you see things moving around in there?
Yes.
All right, that's the life in the soil.
That's awesome.
You see that? Okay. Now, this is basically humic acid when you look at the color of this. All right. And I'm gonna put it up on a higher power. It's gonna look kind of crazy in the beginning, but I'm gonna put it up on a higher power so you can kind of see this a little better.
Scanning.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this in there. Okay, you see everything moving?
Yeah.
It's because it's all alive. It is completely alive. There's nothing in here that's dead. I mean, it's all completely alive. Okay? Now, when you look at this, this is a lower level. I'll focus out to a higher level. There's actually basically 7 structural levels in this. It's not cooperating with me. That right there is a fungus, hyphae. See everything moving?
Can you point to it, Chuck?
Okay, that's fungal hyphae. All right. Those are bacteria. These are rod-shaped bacteria, and these are different types of bacteria. In this little brew, in one tiny drop, there's probably 1.5 million bacteria.
Wow.
In most people's soil, you have almost nothing. Okay, because you kill it. All right, so let's just get off of this and get onto the other side of this thing. Okay. Okay, so we'll go to the next step. Ann and I built this greenhouse in 2013. I decided I was going to do something different for the rest of my life. So we built this, and what we did was pour sidewalks in this greenhouse. And when we poured the sidewalks in the greenhouse, then we took out the natural soil, and we put in its place compost. We took out 24 inches. Now the floor heats, I have heating elements in the floor. There are actually pipes in the floor we pump hot water into, and that's how we heat the greenhouse. But that's in the beginning stages. It started growing beautifully. I started growing organically. Organic chemicals and organic fertilizers. And what we found, these are cucumbers. That one line of cucumbers would produce 200 pounds a day.
No.
All right? Just one row. Each half a row, and there was one kind on this side and one kind on the last half. But they would do that for 8 weeks. And it was really good. I was really impressed, and I liked it. But the problem that we had was this. My pesticide cost me $337 a bottle.
Wow.
And I went through 4 bottles a month.
Oh my.
Because it's Omni approved, it's organic approved. The fertilizers more expensive than anybody's fertilizer because you have to have it approved by the government in order to be on the organic program, in order to say you're organic. And so I was selling a lot of vegetables out of here. And just to kind of give you an idea what it looked like in better production, here's some collards in here. These are jalapeno peppers. Those are papayas. And so the tomatoes, everything did really wonderful. You can grow this way, but you can't make a living. And so I'm a bean counter from the business world for many years. And so I crunched the numbers down, and I was losing about $2,000 every quarter. Selling my vegetables, taking my profits and my expenses, washing it out, I was losing about $2,000 a quarter. And I said, Nan, maybe we ought to just do this for ourselves and not grow for people, not sell to people. Just grow for ourselves, just wipe out our grocery bill and balance it out like that. Also, I had to heat the greenhouse, So when you think about it, it isn't a profitable operation. So I started studying different methods of growing that maybe I could make some money on. And growing is a fascinating thing to me. I really wanted to learn how to do this. I wanted to I wanted to be able to be profitable, though. You know, there's no point, guys, there's no point in doing something for a living if you're taking money out of the bank every quarter to pay for your bills. And so I also was concerned about this. You know, we're going to go through a time of trouble such as never was ever on the face of the earth. If we can grow food, what are we going to do? Store tons of fertilizer and pesticides? I don't have enough money to do that, guys. Don't have enough money. So I prayed every single day. I got on my knees in the greenhouse and on my farm, and I prayed, Lord, give me some wisdom. And so I started studying, and I found this biological farming convention in Ohio in November of 2014, which was just recently. I went to that convention, and it opened my eyes. And these guys were talking a lot about biological farming. Some people were combining. There's basically 3 types of farming today, and a combination of those. You've got conventional farming where they just use the chemical fertilizers, the chemical sprays, and they're much cheaper, incidentally. And a lot of my friends in the farming business now, they use these sprays, and they'll put on sometimes 14 or 15 different types of sprays and spray their crops every single week. They go up and down, and they have a cocktail, they call them cocktails, and they show us on these charts what chemicals we can put together, we can mix together in our tanks and spray our fields, and spray our crops. And do you know that the farmer has the highest incidence of cancer in the world? And so I'm thinking, every one of these instructors that were in the agronomy field, they died early. And I'm thinking, do I want to die early? And do I want to do this pesticide system in order to make money? Because some of them are making money. And but I said, you know, I don't want to go that way. So I went to this conference, and they started talking about biological farming. And biological farming is a completely different approach. So you got conventional, you got organic, and you've got biological. Now, biological, some people that are organic, they call themselves biological because they'll add some biology with their products. But I started taking a course recently, and Dr. Elaine Ingham says you cannot combine the two. And she proved it. Okay, so she proved this thing. I proved it this week. I had this guy that wanted to sell me some compost. And I went and looked at his product and did a biological assessment of it. And he says, but if you mix it with this chicken manure, people are buying this like crazy. Well, she said in this class, if you take chicken manure, even a small amount, and you put it on your soil, you'll kill your microbes completely dead. And she says, why? It isn't the chicken manure, she says. It's the chemicals they feed the chickens. And the antibiotics they feed the chickens. And the antibiotics you feed your cows. And she said a lot of people think they're doing good by putting tons of chicken manure on their soil, and they're killing it dead in a doornail. So I took his sample and I put it under the microscope. Now this one was with chicken manure. This one was without chicken manure. And the one without chicken manure was alive. And the one with chicken manure was completely dead. Okay? So there's these people that farm, and they say, I've got biological products. Why? Because they put a little mycorrhizal fungi down there, they add a little bacteria here, and they call it biological, and it's the up-and-coming thing, so don't be deceived. Either they're going to grow completely biological, or they're not. And if they grow completely biological, that's a biological farm. Otherwise, it's organic or it's conventional. And conventional people put biology out too. And they have now biocontrols for insects. And so now they're calling them biological farms. But they're not. But I'm going to show you this. Show you this process. And during these next probably 8 weeks, we're going to go over each aspect of it. And when you get through, you're going to be able to go out to your sand pit in your backyard and grow vegetables. Okay?
Amen.
And it's amazing. It's an amazing thing. All right, so I go to this convention, and all this time, they keep saying, Dr. Elaine Ingham says this, and Dr. Elaine Ingham says that, and Dr. Elaine Ingham says this. And I'm thinking, who in the world is Dr. Elaine Ingham? I'd like to meet this woman. So I get on Google, and I Google her, and she has this up-and-coming class. And I said, I want to take this class. So it's $8,000, including the microscope. I'm thinking, You know, $8,000 is a lot of money. And I'm so poor I can't even pay attention, you know. So here I go to this convention, and I'm starting to learn about biology. In January the 16th, they start the class. I have to sign up by the 16th. And so we start taking this class. I take the class, and I'm learning this process. And she says this, in the forest, when you go into the forest, she says, who fertilizes those places? Nobody does. God set that up in the very beginning, guys. He set that up, and she says, if you will mimic that, you will grow anything without fertilizer. Now, I met an old man, actually this Gloria's friend, yeah, she takes care of him. And he comes to my house and buys vegetables. And I said, so your mama gardened? Oh yeah, my mama gardened. What kind of fertilizer did she put on? None. Didn't put on fertilizer. Well, you know, in the old days, fertilizer came about at the end of World War II. They had to get rid of these ammunition, this dynamite, all this other stuff. They threw it on the ground, found it grew. They said, oh, we got something else now we can sell, because we can't build this stuff for munitions anymore because nobody's going to buy it. The war's over. So what are we going to do with it? So they concocted up this thing to start selling fertilizer. And they were very successful. All right? But she's saying if you'll go to these old growth forests and you look underneath these leaves, there is these fungal hyphae, this fungus growing, and incidentally, mushrooms are fungus, okay? And they're growing, and she said, if you'll pull the leaves back, you'll find the humus. And humus is where all the biology is.
Wow.
All right? So she shows us this. She goes out in the forest. She says, just pull this away. And she says, right here is about 6 inches of beautiful humus, full of microbiology. Take that. She says, I want you to do an experiment. I want you to take and put some in the ground or in the earth or wherever you want to put it, and then wait 2 weeks so the biology begins to work. And I want you to stick your plants in there and then stick them beside them in an area that doesn't have biology. I said, oh, I can do this. All right. So that's where I went and got that soil. That's Olino State Park. I just pulled the leaves back and I just gathered 40 pounds of this stuff on my backpack, put it in my backpack and carried it out of the woods. Look how beautiful that is. What are those white things? Anybody know? Those are fungal spores. All right? Beautiful. Okay? So I sprinkled it in my runway, all right? And I planted those plants. I planted those plants. That's eggplant, you see? Okay? Look at the eggplant. That's growing with no fertilizer at all. Nothing. Yes?
Do you just sprinkle it on the top, or do you just mix it in?
You sprinkle it on top, wash it in. All right? Now this is our experiment. All right? So I grew these plants. And in another area, I grew plants without this biology, in the same soil, with the exact same amount of water, with the exact same amount of sunshine. And that's what they look like. All right?
How sad.
Yeah, how sad. All right. That's what they look like. All right? So I got this idea now, a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, I think. It's almost 2 weeks ago. I decided I was going to start feeding it biology to see if it would change their growing pattern. And so I did. Look at what they look like now.
Oh my.
In 2 weeks.
Wow.
Just by going in and injecting into their root zone the biology. And they're suddenly flowering. You see?
Yes.
All right. No fertilizer again. Now, that's not a bad looking plant. It went from 3 inches high to 12 inches high in 2 weeks. Is that remarkable? All right. Now, I grew all of this lettuce biologically. Only with biology, with no fertilizer, and I harvested those in 4 weeks. 4 weeks. I sold that whole group to Camp Gautschi. It's beautiful. Beautiful stuff. Look how ornate that is. That's a European lettuce called Salanova. And now I took another area with no fertilizer and I planted cucumbers. at the same time I was growing the other stuff. And you'll see that's all diseased, aphids are eating it up. And the one thing you'll notice in this as we go through this series is this. The aphids will only eat the plants that are diseased. They will not eat the plants that are healthy. The bugs will only go to those that are diseased. So I purposely left these in here to see if it would transfer to my healthy biological plants. It did not. Now, everybody has a greenhouse today. They say if you see one little infestation, it's going to take over your whole greenhouse. I can tell you it will not. It will only eat the bad plants. Okay? So, what happened to these? That's what happened. The aphids ate them up, and then the aphids died. That was it. Beautiful cucumbers, huh? So, yes.
Are you taking the leaves that you're getting from the woods and putting them in?
Not the leaves, the compost underneath the leaves. The humus underneath the leaves, that black soil underneath the leaves.
And that's what you're taking to your home?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, now I'm going to show you, you don't have to go out with a backpack. I'm going to teach you through this series how to grow your own microbes. So all you need is a little pinch from the woods, and then you're going to start growing. When you get through, you're going to know how to raise your protozoas, your nematodes, your good nematodes incidentally. You're going to know how to grow good fungus and good bacteria, how to make it multiply. We're going to teach you that whole process. Okay? All right, so here we go. Now that is the exact same row. I put the biology on the row, and 2 weeks later I planted my seed. That's the same row that these were dead in. Just by changing one item, putting biology. Okay? And now these things are about ready to start being picked, the first picking. All right, so I've got cucumbers coming on, and Charles at KC Produce said, bring me a box Monday. I'll have 100 pounds Monday. Yes?
What if you've already used chicken fertilizer and regular fertilizer in your garden?
In this series, I'm going to tell you how to get it all out. All right? So, these are beautiful little cucumbers. Those are the pickling style. Now, here's my shade house. And I'm growing this squash conventionally organic. All right, Nan sitting beside it to kind of give you an idea. And that was a couple days before she left, when she left last Sunday, so it's probably been 9 days ago we took this picture. That is a biological squash, planted the exact same day. Yeah. Do you see the difference in the size of the leaf? No fertilizer, no pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides, nothing but biology. That's the only difference between those two beds. All right? Now, you have to appreciate the way God grows. And if you'll grow with God, this is going to be called Grow with God series. You're going to cooperate with God. You're going to have success. If you decide you're going to go diametrically opposite, you're not going to have any success. Okay? Those are beautiful plants. That's the squash that's grown biological. Now what I want you to do is understand this. Which one is producing more food? I've gotten 8 yellow squash off of those conventionally grown. And I've gotten 100 pounds off of the others. A little bit more than 100 pounds off of the others. And it cost me nothing. Nothing. And it tastes better.
You had to pay again.
All right. Now here's a bed that I purposely diseased. And now it's easy to disease a plant. Okay. What I did was I dried out the soil, so I killed the biology. I dried it out. Now, if you want your biology to continue to live, you don't let it get dry, powder dry. You want it to be damp. 50% damp is really what you're shooting for. If you have 50% damp, how do you know if it's 50% damp? That's the ideal for microbes. You take some of this soil, all right? Now, this soil is probably somewhere around 20% damp. All right. If it was 50% damp, we would see a lot more microbe activity. When you take this stuff and squeeze it out, if you get one drop with it, squeezing it with all your might, that's 50%. That's one drop. One drop. If you can see water come out your fingers, you know how you squeeze it and water comes out your fingers? That's 70%. It's too wet. What you want is 50%. That's your goal. Hit it with 50%. Now, so I dried this soil down. I killed the microbiology in it. I planted in it and didn't feed it. I purposely wanted that to get disease. That's callaloo. It's an amaranth plant. My Jamaican customers like to buy it. And it's really tasty. It tastes like spinach, incidentally, if you like spinach. All right, so I planted it next to my squash, and the bugs did not move. All right, so a diseased plant puts out an ultraviolet light that attracts insects. A healthy plant will not attract insects. There are a few exceptions, and I'll cover those later. But right next to it, they're actually, well, this thing's leaning over this way, this thing's leaning over that way. They're 6 inches apart, and they did not transfer. Maybe 10 inches apart. Isn't that amazing? No bugs on this. Okay, so here's another shot. I just planted these tomatoes. These are cherry tomatoes on this side. These are heirloom beefsteak style tomatoes called Rutgers. Those plants have been in the ground probably 3 weeks. And they were 2 inches high. All right. Now, here's a biologically grown grass. Here is a conventionally grown grass. Here is a biologically grown soybean. Here is a conventionally grown soybean. Here is a biologically grown grass compared to a conventionally grown grass. And this man here lives in Australia. He had a... Have I been your way? He had this pasture. Now this is a healthy pasture now, but in 2010, Dr. Elaine Ingham was called and asked to go see this guy's pasture. He had 10,000, 14,000 acres or something. He was almost ready to go out of business because his cows were putting on weight. They were dying in the field. And they've actually been on a 9-year drought up until that point. They're still in that drought. And he said, there's got to be a way to fix this problem. And she said, yeah, put biology in your soil. She tested the soil, has no biology. Put the biology back in the soil, the grass will grow with no rain.
Wow.
And she says it'll take the moisture right out of the air. It'll take all of the moisture out of the air and inject it into the plant. And it'll take, now the biology is interesting. These fungus species and these bacterial species takes the nitrogen right out of the air. Did you know that? Man can't do it. There's N2 triple bonded. You can't break it apart. A man has not been able to take nitrogen out of the air, but these biological creatures takes the nitrogen right out of the air and feeds the plant. They are air-breathing animals. And if we will allow them to live, they'll work for us. So she sprayed this biology 3 weeks in a row on his field. And all we do when we spray this biology is to take a biological rich sample, shake it off in water, basically, and spray it on the fields. That's all you have to do. Now we shake it off with air. I've got a machine that I'll take this stuff and put it in, and I'll turn my air pump on with bubbles. And it knocks all the microbes off of this, and then you spray it on your field. That's all you have to do. So she did that 3 weeks in a row. She said, we'll save this field. They did, I think it was 14,000 acres. They sprayed it. And he said, clover's in my field. He said, I've never had clover. This was my dad's land, and I asked him, and he never remembers clover in the field. And it suddenly came out. Now, clover is very, very rich, and it does nitrogen fixation, and it's a sign that you have healthier soil. When you have white clover, it's a perennial. All right, so this is how beautiful this lush grass is. He put his cows in it, and they gained 5 pounds a day.
I need to go there.
5 pounds a day. He could not believe it. They were scrawny, almost ready to die, most of them dying in the field. And here he was. He pulled up the soil sample. Look how beautiful and lush it is. Look at the root zones on it because of the biology. Here's his neighbor's field. And his neighbor comes over and said, what did you do? And it never rained because it took the moisture right out of the air. Now, you can see how beautiful and lush that grass is. You think a cow would want to eat that stuff? I think so. It's beautiful. And he says when his cows would eat his grass, they would pull it up and there was only 2 inches of roots and he ate the roots and everything. And they had these big blotches of nothing but dirt. And so Here he changed his field. Now, has anybody here watched a video called Back to Eden? Okay, we're going to watch part of it today. What time is it? 10 o'clock. We got a little time. All right, now, I want to show you the key to this.
Make sure the sound is up.
All right. I'm going to show you what did I do with you? There you go. Okay. This guy that they did this documentary on is a Christian man, and he, let's see, make sure it's working. Okay.
When you look at the...
Okay. This is going to give you the first step to changing your property into a biological farm. A biological garden. You could take a 12 by 12 spot and just convert it. And it's actually much easier than you think. It's actually so easy that it'll blow your mind. And you just want to cooperate with God in this whole process. Now, what we're going to do is going to show you how this guy just discovered this and changed his property into a biological property and started cooperating with God instead of fighting God and going diametrically opposite with God. He's now discovered God grows this way, I'm going to grow this way. Okay? So what I want you to do is watch this video and catch the drift. And then what we're going to do in subsequent weeks is we're going to show you how to grow microbes, how to get them, where to farm them, how to find them, how to look for them, how all the different types of microbes to do different things. And it's really a remarkable process. Okay?
Incredible landscape on planet Earth, all the different terrains, the varying soil conditions, the awesome water features, oceans, lakes, rivers, streams, the waterfalls, the different climates, the huge amounts of plants and ground covers. The requirements are so varied. Can one fathom how big a project that was? When God designed the landscape project for planet Earth, He was so genius, He designed it in such a way He would never have to show up to work. It is
Did you guys hear it in
completely
back?
self-sustained. My name is Gautschi, and I was raised as a gardener. My parents grew all of our food in Los Angeles as I grew up, and I remember as a 5-year-old kid, my dad on Saturday morning waking us up and saying, well, we got to head off into the to the horse stables to get some horse manure. So we went down to a rental yard, got a trailer, and went to the horse stables and loaded up manure and came home and spread out in the garden and spaded it in. And as kids, we wore shovels out, spading in heavy clay ground, mixing soil and having a garden. It was wonderful growing up because there's every time we were hungry, we could go outside and take fresh vegetables and fruit all the time. And just down in California, there's nothing you couldn't grow, so we had it all year long. So it was really great. And so as I started to grow up and I got married and I had some children, and I decided Los Angeles is no longer a place fit for human habitation as far as I was concerned. It was getting really crowded and smoggy and just not safe. And so I thought, I want to go move to a place where I can continue to do this and grow fresh food for my family, have clean water, clean air. So we came up here to the Olympic Peninsula of Washington. We have a beautiful place. But we built a house and we faced a real challenge. We drilled a well at 213 feet, got half a gallon a minute. And if you're doing the math and thinking about that, that's not enough water to do a garden. I'll never forget as long as I live. It was August 1979. It was great to build a house. It didn't rain all summer, but boy, in August, all this grass was totally dead. The road coming in was all dust. And I'm looking at that saying, God, how am I going to grow fruits without water? And it was so incredible. I hear inside, it says, well, you're looking at the wrong thing. Turn around and look at your trees. And I pushed enough out when I built the house that I knew they had shallow roots. And I says, God, you really have my attention. If you could show me how you do these without irrigation, I can do an orchard. So I went out to the woods of the fork and I started moving this material underneath the trees, and I was totally amazed. This beautiful, soft, black, damp, incredible compost. When I saw that, I says, well, I can do this. This makes sense. So I started planting the trees out there, and at that time I had straw and sheep manure. Now I'm using wood chips. And it's been amazing. This orchard's been here 31 years now. It's never been watered or fertilized once. It goes through droughts or whatever, and it's just every year it gets better. As I was doing this orchard, experiencing these incredible results, because I was a creature of habit, and because our nature is to do things as we're taught, and not to inquire from God, I says, okay, God, thanks for the help, but I can handle this on my own. And so for, I think, probably 17 years, I was out here diligently, rototilling, hauling in organic material. You can see a place over here, my major rock pile. This is my altar. This is where all the rocks that came out of my garden over here. And I'm just doing this stuff, and I'm feeling I'm on this treadmill, just running in place, going nowhere, feeling like, oh, I'm going to keep up with this. You know, every spring, the ground is totally muddy and wet. When I tilled it, it turned to weeds in 5 to 7 days, solid green with weeds. I planted things 3 feet apart so I could do the weeding with the tiller, and it was just labor intensive. And one day I got on my orchard, I don't know what motivated me, I got on my knees and I started moving these wood chips. And I'm down to my elbow in this beautiful black compost. And I got up and started screaming. I was so angry. I said, there's something wrong with this picture. I have been killing myself to get this in my garden. I don't have it. I didn't do anything here. And I hear inside, well, it works in your garden the same way. You didn't ask. I was so angry. I threw that door away. I started covering my garden with wood chips. I always say to people, the greatest gift God ever gave me was that lousy well, because it opened me up to Him and to show me His incredible, work in creation. I've been a gardener for 55 years, and done tilling and all that stuff. And it's so amazing now. My only tool is a rake, and it's just so easy and so simple, and the production is so superior to what I ever had.
Ever wonder why you're working? Ever tired of researching? Oh, there's gotta be a better way. So you lift your hands up and pray. Father, can you hear me? I'm listening to you now. I'm ready to trust you, to lead and guide me somehow. The creator of the universe concerns himself with me. He's passionately revealing his culture of love and of peace to Eden. Eden is the place of freedom. To Eden is the place of freedom. Your yoke is easy, your burden is light. Help me to lean on you the rest of my life. To Eden is the place of freedom.
When I saw how easy and simple this was, I says, God, where did we lose it? Why are we doing this? And it was so interesting. It took me right back to Genesis in the beginning. And if you look at in the beginning, when Adam and Eve were in the garden, they had this beautiful, relaxing day in the garden. And every afternoon and evening, God would come down and walk with them through the garden. And I'm sure as He walked through the garden, He would just share with them things that they saw in the garden that day about Himself. Did you notice this? This is my character. This is all about me, kind of thing. And I'm sure they just had this incredible time, totally relaxed, no stress, every day. But when man sinned, Scripture said things are going to change. And the wording is, by the sweat of your brow, you're going to raise food. Thistles and thorns and weeds are going to be with you. And the next verse says, and man began to till the soil. You see, man never cultivated the garden. He tended the garden, but he never disturbed the ground. And when man got disconnected from God, he began to till the soil. The whole issue is so very simple. It's all about cover. Nowhere in nature where man has not been do you ever see exposed dirt. That only happens when man comes, takes the cover. Everywhere in nature where man has not been, it's either covered with needles and leaves or grasses, but the ground is covered. And the reason is because the ground is a living organism. And as all living organisms, such as ourselves, we have skin to protect us. The animals have fur, fish have scales, birds have feathers, and the soil is a living organism. And God has designed it and made it so it's always covered with something. And when you take the cover off, it becomes vulnerable and it gets lost. This is the thing that amazes me about us as intelligent human beings, how we don't see it, because we've been experiencing it for thousands of years in a negative way. We're all around us, all through creation. Everything's just growing beautifully with no work. And we work hard to fail. When we came to the Midwest here 200 years ago, there was 8 to 12 feet of beautiful topsoil. I mean, gorgeous stuff. And if you ever flown across the Midwest and you look down at the ground, it's almost scary. It's just parched, cracked, hard, totally desolate. Almost looks like desert. There's 8 inches of topsoil today because it's all blown and washed away, and they're still cultivating. This is not working, and we're losing topsoil. And topsoil in nature, it takes 100 years to build an inch of topsoil. I mean, it is criminal and incredibly devastating what we've done to the planet.
Soil conservation people in the Midwest will tell you that it's okay to lose around 4 tons of soil per acre per year. I don't believe, I may be wrong, I don't believe that soil is forming at the rate of 4 tons per acre per year. When the soil erodes, the organic matter erodes and all the nutrients that were in the soil erode, and that's just gone. It's just a resource that isn't there anymore.
I found that if I try to help nature at any level, I mess it up. My approach now is just to look what it does. I says, talk to me, show me what you're doing, because I want to copy it, because it does it the best. I have 2 properties that I'm doing this on. This one here, the ground is clay and rock. It would be impossible to farm. It would be considered, from the agricultural point of view, as marginal soil. The other place I have is 80% rock, totally gravel pit. You couldn't possibly till it. You couldn't possibly cultivate it. And in both of those places, I'm experiencing the most incredible, beautiful gardens. I love that scripture where it says, as we behold the Lord, we're being changed from glory to glory. And I find that anything that comes in contact with God gets changed, including clay and rock and rock. It's just so awesome to take people and take them back and show them my incredible ground. You can't even break with a pick. And you walk on this stuff, it's totally buoyant, everything's just growing great, And I didn't do anything. I just put the cover down and God does it all. Whatever organic, natural thing you have at your disposal, it will work. And I've used everything from straw, grass clippings, leaves, animal manures, rocks. But having used them all, I come back to wood chips and I see where it's been for a while and what it's done. It is my favorite. It just is the nicest thing to use. First of all, when I speak of wood chips, I want to delineate between wood chips and other things that people put in the same category, such as bark or shavings or sawdust. Wood chips, when I say wood chips, I'm referring to branches that have been chipped. Branches of trees, which is about 90% needles and leaves, have gone through a chipper or a tub grinder. You want to get it from the source, either a good tree service or someplace that has a good amount of it, and because the bag's just too small and too expensive. If you live in an area where you have local tree services, people that are trimming trees or taking them down, I just get in the phone book and look for those kind of people, and that would be a great source. In most cases, to them, it's something they've got to get rid of, and so they're looking for places to get rid of it, so it shouldn't be a problem. This whole area gets filled. Let's pack it in tight. As much as you can bring, man, I'll use it.
In the local area here, we remove hazard trees and trimming and view removals and different things to enhance views. And so this is a byproduct of that operation. We've dumped chips here for Paul for a lot of years. 12? Okay, 12 years. In Paul's case, this is so handy for us because of the location, it actually saves us time. So we give it to Paul. It's handy for us to get rid of the material. So it's getting more and more common for people to call us wanting chips.
The thing about mulch is pretty much in every municipality, there's mulch available. Because someone's chopping a tree down, somebody's cutting a tree, somebody's shredding leaves. If we can try and get things that are as close as possible to us, maybe it's your neighbor that's chipping up a tree next door, then that's the best product for you.
I'm an arborist. I prune trees for a living, and for me it's an art form, and I'm so thankful to be able to do it because it's a gift that I have, and it's just something that's just so pleasing and so pleasurable. It's interesting that the scripture talks about pruning. There in John 15, Jesus is saying that I am the vine and you are the branches. My Father is the husbandman. He's the one who maintains and cares for it all. And it goes on to say that he prunes the trees for what purpose? So they'll bear more fruit. And I love these things about God because they're so much bigger than I. When I try to figure that out, it makes no sense. If I'm cutting a tree, taking branches off, it would make sense to me from a mathematical point of view. I'm reducing its capacity to bear fruit. But God is saying He prunes so it will bear more fruit. And it's just this incredible, beautiful illustration of God, how His whole principle is, it's in giving you receive. And so with the tree, when you're taking stuff out of it and it's giving of itself, that process develops it and strengthens it and encourages it to produce more fruit. And in my experience, I totally see it. People will come to my orchard here, this time of year, and you can't even walk through it. They'll come after I prune it in January, and say, "What happened to your trees? They're naked. I mean, what'd you do to them?" I says, "Well, come back in September. They'll be all touchy, And I'm just basically, making room for them to fill in, and they just produce so heavily every year. And it's amazing how much comes out. But they come right back and produce tremendously. And I'm finding, I always tell people, if you want a tree to grow, the most stimulating thing you can do to it is cut it. Cutting it will way surpass fertilizing, watering, anything else. Nothing compares to the effect of pruning. Every time I prune, I've got all these good branches to chip up and put back, and every year it happens over again, and it's endless, and it's totally free, provided by God. It's just, again, it's such a beautiful picture of His character.
My name's Steve Johnson. I run what's called the Lazy Jade Tree Farm. Most of the farm is in Christmas trees, fruit orchards, vegetable operation, and then the compost facility here. I only do yard waste through my facility, normal yard waste that comes in. As long as you've got fairly good green coming in with the yard waste, has the right carbon-nitrogen ratio to compost properly. I ran a chipper for years, and you have to pick up the material and put it into the chipper, and after a while it's just too much labor and energy for what you're getting out of it. And so the tub grinder is really a good way to put the material through fast, and you never handle it by hand. Takes a lot of material to farm with it.
You know what's so interesting about this? I came across this revelation today. These wood chips, when the wind blows, don't move. And they're lighter than dirt. You track with that. That's bigger than me. And I love it. It's nature. It's so awesome how the Creator designed this. I mean, there's no tilling, there's no thinking, there's no nothing with that. This is the only tool I need. And it is awesome.
My roses love it.
Everything loves it. Well, I just went to the place where they make all this good compost and got a nice load of it. Last time I put this here was about 3 years ago. I think with this application, it'll probably go maybe 4 or 5 years. I'm finding that instead of like compounding interest, gains in time, and you have to put less and less down as time goes on. Gotta believe this. Love the color of them. It's how succulent and healthy they are. It is. 2 words I want you to think about when you come here. Sustainable permaculture. Everything you see here was created in nature for free, and it's renewable. It was for liberty Christ came to set us free. Everything about God is free and sets free. And I love that about his character, and it's so beautifully just, exemplified and shown in nature. This is just so freeing. And I love that scripture where he says, "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." Now you have to ask the question, why do we labor? And why are we heavy laden? It's because of the fall. He says, "Take my yoke upon you." And what do we use the yoke for? That's what attached to the oxen or the animals to some device to cultivate the ground. And Jesus says, "I don't do things like you. Follow me around and learn from me. My yoke is easy and my burden is light." And in this incredible environment, this thing that God has created, he shows his magnanimous, awesome, giving, generous nature. And it is so beautiful in comparison to the man approach of tilling and putting back, constantly being on a treadmill running, never getting on top of it. All these wood chips just sit here, I don't do a thing. Anytime I choose to plant, put a seed in until it thrives. If I don't use it, it just waits for me and develops, richer qualities. And in the meantime, it doesn't blow away, it doesn't turn to weeds, and it just stays. Where conversely, anything that I do, if I don't stay right on it, maintain it, I lose it, kind of thing. I'm a slave to it. And again, it's just this incredible quality of God of just setting us free. What I find quite interesting is that the issues we have in agriculture, and I'll just list them: soil preparation, fertilization, irrigation, weed control, pest issues, crop rotation, pH issues, none of those issues exist in nature. And what I'm finding at my place, none of them exist here either. And I feel just so thankful to be set free from that. Soil preparation, when you put the wood chips down, they never compact. They're always soft. Every year I come out to my garden, all I need is my rake and just grade it out, make a little root and plant my seeds. Because the air is always present, because it never compacts, it never has to be prepared. You come to a place where you've got you've gardened, and your garden at the end of the year is all hard again. So you bring in this really nice organic material, fertilizer, manures, whatever, you till it in, you got this really fluffy, nice, aerated material, and you're so happy. Oh, what a nice garden. You get out in your rake and you plant, your stuff comes up. As the year progresses, when you get to the end of the growing season, that ground is right back to where you started. It's all compacted and hard again. And here's what happens. I use the example of a fire. To get a fire to go, you have to have three ingredients: ignition, fuel, and oxygen. In the soil, nitrogen is always present. That's the igniter. When you bring in raw material, the fuel, and to get it there, air follows, it all burns up. You don't see smoke, but it all burns up.
There's a number of different ways to use the material. If you take the raw grindings and mix it in with your soil, it'll rob all the nitrogen out of the soil to rot the wood, or rot the material. So you don't really want to do that.
So I tilled in these beautiful potato chip, wood-colored orange wood chips into my garden last spring, and I wasn't too successful. My soil test says that I'm way down in nitrogen. Because I tilled those wood chips in, I tied up all the nitrogen in my soil. But now I know you never till this stuff. You just add to it, which was the mistake I made. So by getting the faith back and going back to what Paul has taught me, I think this is going to work because it's simpler, right?
Basically what soil needs to survive is the same as that. It needs air, it needs water, and it needs food. It's a basic principle for all life. And so when you take mulch, for example, which is true in the forest, because there's not just one grade, like someone didn't go through and sift it and it wasn't always all coarse material or it wasn't all fine material. There's all what they have, like macro pores. So there's all these different air pockets through the soil. And so what that does is it keeps the top part of the soil and even further down oxygenated. And so there's that oxygen is available, the microbes and the earthworms come up into the soil, and then they can actually deal with that material and break it down. Normally when people think about mulch, they might think about what they call bark nuggets, which are just big chunks. It has to have different sizes of actual material. You have to have small grades, you got to have things like needles, you got to have things like chips. You can't have just one standardized size and expect that to do the same as what I mean, if we look at what Paul's got here, and I dig down, there's probably, I don't know how many different sizes of chips, all the way down to what the finished product is, and which is soil or organic material to the point where it's, I mean, that's what you're going for. Now, if I took and I multiplied this by a couple hundred times, and that's what I was using, it would break down, but it would take a lot longer, and the ability right away for it to help out diminishes.
I started off with alderwood chips, which are kind of big potato chip sized chunks of wood.
This has been here a year, and it hasn't broken down yet. So I don't think this is what Paul's talking about.
It would have taken too long to break down.
And the other main thing that they're finding with a lot of different trees, grasses, plants, vegetables, compaction levels. A true healthy soil is not compacted, and when it does get compacted, it loses the oxygen, like those macropores we were talking about. And you get an area where it becomes what they call anaerobic, which means the oxygen level is too low for the microorganisms to live.
We're dealing, as I said earlier, with compaction here on our farm, and certainly we're growing root crops to help alleviate that problem. What we're also doing is adding wood chips on top, knowing that they're going to break down slowly over time, create fines, and also work into this compacted soil. So it's kind of like a passive tilling almost that's occurring, which is a really exciting prospect to think that we don't need the heavy machinery or the heavy disturbance. We can just keep adding, and it'll work itself out.
I have used the raw grindings, and there's a number of people that do this, is just keep it on the surface. You're basically sheet composting, and it's more of a mulch than an additive to your soil. I have a tendency to compost between 10 months and a year. The compost itself, once it's composted, and then the screen material, you can use that several different ways. You can plant straight in it, which is, there's a lot of people that do that, or you can just leave it on the surface as a mulch. Compost does a lot of wonderful things besides just nutrient benefits in your soil, worms, and beneficial fungus that's in there. You'll just see the plants just love it.
Fertilization, because of the compost material, every time it rains or you water, compost tea is being deposited into the soil, so you have a constant input of fertilization going on. Just not having a fertilized feature, to me, is just so amazing and such an incredible gift in this kind of stuff. And last year I had such an incredible experience, a real revelatory time. I planted a row of spinach in the spring, and it came up really nice, and we enjoyed it. And I pulled it out and planted another one, and it came up, the next one came up bigger and nicer than the one before. And then I was getting ready to pull it up, and one of my neighbors was talking about this black Spanish radish that was so good, so I planted that for her. And that came up, and she couldn't believe the size and how beautiful that was. And I'm looking at this, and I'm just contemplating what's going on. And she says, "Now, God, talk to me." Every time I planted in the same row this year, each one was bigger and nicer than before, and I didn't fertilize. This is so opposite of what my experience is in gardening. Whenever I plant something was taken out, I put something back. And here I'm putting nothing back, and each planting is bigger and nicer than the one before, And I hear him say to me, this so incredible, in Romans 1, he says, "The invisible attributes of God are clearly seen by the things he's made, so that no one has any excuse not to know God." And so I just started taking it in and says, "Look, God, what invisible attribute are you showing me here?" He took me to Philippians, where it says, "And my God shall supply all your need, not from his riches, but according to his riches in Christ Jesus." And what he's saying there is that when he gives, he makes no deduction, he makes no withdrawal, he is the same. And he says this compost is illustrating that quality of my character. It gives, and it gives, and it gives. And there's no withdrawal, there's no negative. It just continually gives. And that's who I am.
These leaves are falling down, and the idea is they're feeding the soil back. So they're done. So at this state, the chlorophyll is going out of them because they're going dormant. They're going to drop these leaves that still have nutrients. And the reason they're changing color is that green chlorophyll is gone, the pigment. They drop down in, and they're feeding that soil, and they're mulching it by their own. I mean, we're not coming over here and taking the leaves off and mulching below them. And if we go over here, or we go out in the forest, they're doing the same thing. So, I mean, they've been developed over these eons to do it, and so, I mean, why question it? Obviously, that's what wants to happen. And when you go out, and someone might say, well, that's not true with grasses. You go out into a grass field, let's say the prairie of the Midwest, there was grasses that were over my head, but underneath it was mulch from the grass. You know what I mean? It wasn't just green living grass with nothing else. There was mulch that all those blades of grass that had broken down fed the grass. There's nobody that goes out there and fertilizes that. I mean, that's the thing that people always say, well, you gotta have fertilizer. You have to fertilize, or I mean, if there is no out, you're not taking it away, you know, it's all going back. The animals were eating the grass and it was still going back. So if you can recreate that in the garden, it's the same exact thing. The leaves come out, they do their purpose, they go back into the soil. It's really simplistic, and sometimes the most simplistic things are what people don't like to accept as being the answer.
Whenever you buy fertilizers, there'll be three numbers or three things that they're analyzing in the fertilizers: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen is what gives the green, the good vigorous growth. The phosphorus is what creates the budding and the flowers and the fruit production. And the potassium is what gives hardiness and health and strength to resist disease. And all those things are important to be in the soil for the health of the plant. Chemical fertilizers, even though they have the numbers that say they're adequate in these features, do not have minerals, and so the plants that are growing without minerals don't have those in them, so they don't have the nutrient qualities that plants that grow in organic soil do.
Minerals simply aren't there in the soil anymore. And so it'll take up what it can get, but it isn't there to be gotten. And so you end up with a fruit or a vegetable or whatever it is that simply isn't as nutritious as it once was when we had more fertile soils. Just the sort of calcium, magnesium, potassium, iodine, those kinds of things, the things that aren't fertilized typically. You know, as 30-40% reduction in what they were getting 50 years ago. That's pretty alarming, which is helps explain why food doesn't taste as good as it used to. It isn't as good as it used to. It's not as nutritious.
I always go to that scripture where
See
God
how far
says
along
it's
we
good for
are?
a man to bear the yoke of his
That's a
youth.
third. A third. You can buy that video on Amazon.com for $19.95 and $5 shipping, or you can look at it on the internet. In this process, he shows you. They go over with you the microbiology in the end. The key to growing a healthy product. In every single grain of sand is all the nutrition that a plant needs. It's just not available until the microbiology eats it and then eventually defecates it in the root zone. Now, a lot of people worry about pH. If you don't fertilize, your plants control the pH all by itself. Okay? So what's interesting is the scientist I'm taking this course from, she says, okay, we're going to do a soil sample right over here. We're going to find out what the pH is next to this plant, about 3 feet away from this plant. And it was like 5.7 pH. She goes, now plants grow ideally in 6.4. So she went down into the root zone, took a test from the root zone, and put it in, and it was 6.4. How did it do that? The plant controls the pH. Don't worry about pH. Plant controls it. As long as you don't fertilize it, it puts out a chemical in the soil that controls the entire environment all around the root zone, called the rhizosphere. The atmosphere, rhizosphere. Okay? So that's a root zone. So that plant puts out this chemical, it's called an exudate, puts it in there, draws the bacteria, feeds the fungi. The fungi come and attach it to the root system and then go out and search for food in order to get more exudates, because it's a sweet, sugary substance that these bacteria and fungi love. And so that plant sends out the signal, and it goes far and wide in search of food. You know, there's one single fungus that's the largest animal in the world. It's an animal. And it's in Washington State. It's 20 miles long, 20 miles wide, and 25 feet deep. And all that one single fungus is feeding an entire forest. Every tree in that forest is fed by that one fungus. And he's going out everywhere. If you have a pecan tree in the middle of 5 acres, and you have not fertilized it, it'll have ecto mycorrhizal fungi that attaches to the roots and searches, and it will go out acres and acres and acres looking for nutrition in order to get the exudates. Cooperate with nature, and nature will cooperate with you. God has set all this stuff up, and all during this process, we're going to teach you how to use microbes in the soil to feed your plants without ever using any fertilizer ever again. And so come each week. We're going to cover next week what are some of the things that kill it and how to get rid of all that toxic poison we put on. All right? So, and then we're going to cover the decomposers. So we got the decomposers that take the leaves and all this stuff and decomposes it. Then we have the predator series that eat those decomposers and poop it out. And then we have the larger predator species that eat those smaller ones and they poop them out. It's a big poop machine, trust me. So this whole process, and when they're working in sync, it's a remarkable process. Now you saw my garden. Yesterday I harvested 45 pounds of eggplant off of that. I harvested this week, during the week I harvested, just on a half a row, I harvested probably 60 pounds. So between the two of it was over 100 pounds, and I still have eggplant on my plants. Just a half a row. So understand that it was grown without fertilizer and without a pesticide. And you can do the same thing. It's not hard. It is very easy. Now we're going to cover some scientific things, but it's not going to be so deep that you won't understand it. I'm going to try to dumb it down so that all of us can understand it, because you don't need to know the scientific aspects in order to understand the processes. Okay? What we're going to do is set up the situation where how do you know whether your compost is decomposed or not, whether it is all finished. Well, you take your compost and you take a tea bag and you dip it in the water like a tea bag. You take it and put it in cloth and dip it in water. And if the water turns brown and stays suspended, doesn't settle, it is finished compost. Okay? It is humic acid. That's humates in this. Okay? So that's how you determine whether it's finished. There's going to be a lot of little tricks you're going to learn. We're going to teach you how to compost, how to raise your own microbes, how to go in the forest. And we're going to go in the forest, and I'm going to show you where to go get them. And it's going to be an interesting process. I'll take you to the farm, and we'll show you some things that are going on at the farm. All right. We're finished. Anybody would like, Bert, would you like to have a short prayer?
Yeah.
All right.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you that this knowledge is free from you.
Amen.
If we just get back to nature and realize how you things set up in the beginning. And we pray, Father, that as from week to week we learn from the things that Chuck has been able to pay $8,000 to learn, that we'll be able to grow our own gardens, maybe even small plots, reap the harvest, and cooperate with you in growing the product to eat and to grow. And through the process, we want to grow spiritually. We want to draw closer to you, to know you better and love you more. And this is our prayer, for we ask it in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.